If you could go back in time to 15-year-old Lance,
Oh God.
you've got a week with him.
Yeah.
What kind of lessons would you try to impart on him?
That's because 15 was an interesting age. So there would have been a lot. I mean, that was a very
You're good enough that I picked 15
the 15
because
was when
you're a pro triathlete.
Well, I was a pro athlete, and it was when my mom kicked out Terry Armstrong.
Okay, so I didn't know that was 15.
Yeah, that was 15. So that was a point in time where it was her and I against the world. Like, fuck everybody else. We're gonna get these people. Like, he's gone, we're together. Like, let's go. And so that was a very important.
So the chip on your shoulder, which I'm guessing exists subconsciously, now became pretty conscious.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that chip on your shoulder did a lot of good for you and obviously a lot of bad for you.
Yeah.
So do you think that, again, in this thought experiment, right, if you had a week to coach that kid, could you have figured out a way to extract the value from that complex and soften some of the damage that it was going to ultimately cause you via the damage it would cause to others?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really, nobody, I mean, 15-year-olds don't realize that, but the amount of trauma that I had already had in my life, which, just got actually worse and worse and worse. I mean, cancer was hugely traumatic, and then the fall was traumatic. Like, there's a lot to unpack there. And so, and then, never meeting your father and having somebody around, it was just, and never having that figure in your life, and the figure that was there was wildly defective. It would have been in and around that, whether that was through even therapy at the time. Then, I mean, if I was, by the way, if somebody would have come up to me when I was 15 and said, I feel like you've had some crazy shit in your 15 years, you should just do a little bit once a month, I would have said, you know what, why don't you go fuck yourself? I ain't doing therapy for nothing. Like, I embrace that stuff now, but there would have been a lot of work to do even then.
What could you have told him, though? Like, again, if he's not willing to go to therapy, which I can understand, that's a pretty hard sell to a really, really cocky 15-year-old.
Right.
What else can you tell him? I'm just, or was he too far gone at that point? Like, it's one of the things I've learned about myself over time is that so many of the character traits that were both positive and negative, and they tend to cluster like right on top of each other, right? It's like two genes that sit right next to each other in the chromosome, one good, one bad. A lot of those traits come about long before we're consciously aware of what led to them. Yeah. And I think your case is really obvious sometimes. Like, some of those traumas are so obvious, right? Like the dad, the stepdad, the growing up without this, the growing up in a place that and then of course that says nothing about cancer, which I don't know. Like, do you feel you've gone back and unpacked that PTSD through all of those layers now as an adult?
Well, I don't know that any of us can ever unpack it all, but in the last year, I've certainly done more unpacking than in the previous 49. Yeah. Like, way more, and that's, but, and I should have started that process a lot earlier. But, I guess going back to the question though, on the, I was just, even then at 15, everything was, I drove a fast car, and every green light was a competition, and everything was like, slow down, kid. Like, it was just, everything was a fight, not even a competition. It was a fight, right? And but you said it. I mean, it would have been impossible to get through. Just like that 15-year-old, the 25-year-old, the 35-year-old, even the 45-year-old, you would not have gotten through.
I think that's something that very few people can understand. I can relate to it, Lance, because I've had my own total destruction. And I've played the game in my head 100 times. God, I just wish I could take that all back. I wish I could undo all of that stuff. But I realize if I were to undo all of that stuff, I wouldn't have fallen down.
Right.
And if I didn't fall down and lose it all.
Right. But this is when
you
you say, well, I wouldn't change a thing, because these series of events happened and boom, it caused, whether it's deep work or introspection or realignment, whatever you want to call it, then that wouldn't have happened. Like that's just that's a hard answer. I mean, that answer has never worked for me, but because, people, but they analyze so much of the stuff, but I mean, in many ways it's true.
This podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. No doctor-patient relationship is formed. The use of this information and the materials linked to this podcast is at the user's own risk. The content on this podcast is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice from any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions. Finally, I take conflicts of interest very seriously. For all of my disclosures and the companies I invest in or advise, please visit peteratiamd.com/about, where I keep an up-to-date and active list of such companies.